Hello everyone, I'm Gary Rebholz and welcome to another live webinar with Sony Creative Software. From previous webinars, you've given us a lot of great feedback and comments, and one of the things that we saw consistently was that you wanted more details on specific features. And so today, I'm going to give you some specific features as we talk about 10 techniques that I use on a consistent basis in my own Vegas Pro editing projects, and that I consider to be critical to understanding the application and really getting the most out of it and helping you get your jobs done more effectively. Now in reality, I've broken things down into 10 technique categories, and in each one of these categories I'm going to have a lot of different tidbits of information, so I'm going to go through it really fast to try to get through all of it. But don't worry if you don't get it all this first time around, because we are going to be archiving this presentation at this same page, and you'll be able to watch it on demand within about a week or two of this broadcast. Now we'll set aside some time at the end of the presentation to answer some of the questions that you can send via the chat window, and my engineer Matthew Kramer will relay those questions to me, and I'll do my best to answer them. But if you stump me, I've got off-camera support from Matt with the product marketing team and Dave and Dennis from the software development team. And these are the guys that develop the features of the application and write the code, so don't be shy about asking questions. Now, before we get into the 10 techniques that I want to talk about, I'm going to ask you experienced Vegas Pro users to bear with me for a few minutes, because I know that we've got a lot of people signed up for this webinar who don't have a lot of experience with the application, and in fact many who may be looking at it for the first time. So I want to take a few brief minutes to give a little overview of the application of Vegas Pro-10 and give them a little bit of a frame of reference with which they can understand the techniques that we're going to be talking about. So with all that, let's switch over to the computer feed and let's talk about 10 Vegas Pro techniques for power editing. So Vegas Pro, when you buy the Vegas Pro 9 collection, you get two things. You get Vegas Pro 9, of course, for editing your video and audio, all your production needs, and you get DVD Architect Pro 5. Now, we're not going to talk about DVD Architect Pro today, but you'll use DVD Architect Pro to create DVDs to master or to assemble and burn your DVDs and Blu-ray discs so that you can deliver the projects that you create in Vegas Pro. Vegas Pro 9 has been renowned over the years for comprehensive native file format support. One of the things that Vegas Pro has been great at over the years is basically taking just about anything you can throw at it, mixed file formats, mixed frame rates, PAL, NTSC, mix it all up and throw it on the timeline, and Vegas Pro just uses it. Of course, there are precise editing tools for both audio and video, comprehensive color correction and other video effects, compositing, superior audio capabilities, and we'll talk about a lot of these things during this presentation. Okay, let's switch over to the application, and let me just give you a real quick look at Vegas Pro 9 and just help those of you who are new to it get your bearings a little bit. Now, when you open Vegas Pro for the first time, you see what you see here on my screen right now. And the bottom area is what we call a timeline. That's where all the action basically is going to take place. That's where you're going to add your media, move it, place it, trim it, and do all the things that you're going to do to it to create your edits. Along the top, we've got the window docking area, and there are several windows opening in this area right now. On the left here, you've got the project media window where as you build your project, you'll see your media appear in this window so that you can keep track of it and use it again if you need it. The next window is called the trimmer window, and we're going to talk about the trimmer window as one of the techniques that I want to cover, so we'll just skip over that for now. The video preview window here, this black window, is of course where you're going to watch your video as you assemble it. And the last window on the right is the mixer window, and that right now holds a control called the master bus. And we're going to talk about audio busing a little bit in this presentation as well. So the sort of traditional Vegas Pro workflow is basically find a file, drop it into your timeline, and get on with your editing. And so that's what I want to do real quickly here just to show you how that works. I'm going to go to my Explorer window. And the Explorer window works basically just like Windows Explorer, and it enables me to navigate my computer or network drives to find the files that I want. So I've navigated to my media folder here, and I have several folders and a couple of files. I can preview the files from here, and if I decide it's the one I want, I can just simply drag it down into my timeline. And when I do, a couple of things happen. First of all, Vegas Pro creates two tracks. One is an audio track, one's a video track. So in other words, we split the audio from the video to keep it easily identifiable and separate and be able to work on it separately. You see a couple of objects on the timeline. We call these boxes events, and they basically just hold the media that I just added to my file, to my project. I can click inside that media to place the cursor there, and wherever I click, that frame of video shows up in the preview window. Of course, I can move this to any location on my timeline, and notice that when I do move it, even though I'm dragging the video event, the audio event comes with it. By default, we group those events so that you maintain sync. If you move one, the other moves with it, so you don't get your audio out of sync with your video. Now, in a more old school workflow, you might have a source window and bring the source window in, mark your in and your out, and then drop it into your timeline. Well, in this sort of traditional Vegas Pro workflow, you notice that I didn't use a source window. I just went straight to the timeline. Well, once I'm in the timeline, I can simply trim off the edges of these events to mark my in and my out points. And again, notice that the audio event trims along with it since they're grouped. So I can mark my in and my out points on the timeline instead of in a source window. If I play this, you'll notice that it just suddenly starts, and if I scoot to the end, it's just as suddenly it ends. Well, every event in my timeline enables me to create a fade in or out. So all I need to do is I'll point to the upper corner here and just create a quick fade in and out, and I could do that on the video event as well as the audio event, so that now when I play this, it fades in nicely. So the fade in and out envelopes is a nice technique to quickly fade into an event and back out of it. I can add, of course, another event on my timeline. So here I've got two events, and if I move these events close enough, they'll snap to each other. You can see the little blue highlight between the events. They'll snap to each other to ensure that I've got them right next to each other. There are no black frames going to inadvertently get into my project. If I drag a little further and overlap them, we create what's called an automatic crossfade. And that's just basically a transition where the first event fades out as the second fades in. So here's the first one fading out, and the second event fades in. And we can replace that crossfade with any number of default transitions that are installed when you install the application. So if you want something other than a crossfade, you can easily drop a transition into that clip. All right, now one more edit that I want to show you before we move on to the 10 techniques is that I can split an event up into multiple events. So for instance, if I have a little piece of this second event that I want to remove from my project, I can place my cursor there and choose Edit, Split. Notice the keyboard command for split is simply S. That's one that you'll probably use an awful lot, so you should learn that one. So when I choose that, the event is now split into two separate events. And if I go a little later and press S, I can now delete that middle portion. So the split command is a great one to know for editing quickly. Okay. So that hopefully gives you a quick overview of how Vegas Pro works in general. It's very, very intuitive, drag, drop, and click to do the operations that you want to create. Now, those of you who are new to the application, I want to point out that we have a lot of training materials available. You can go to our website at www.sonycreativesoftware.com/training, and there you'll find all kinds of resources. Particularly, there are several free training videos, including a whole series of basics tutorials. It takes maybe about 45 minutes to an hour to get through that tutorial. But if you need to get up and running in the application, that's a great way to get started. So take a look at those training resources. All right, let's go back and start talking about the 10 techniques that I promised we'd cover here. All right, technique number 1, the Device Explorer. The Device Explorer window is new to Vegas Pro 9, and basically what it gives is a very powerful tool for working natively with some of the more popular new file formats that are coming on board these days, including AVC HD. For instance, the new Sony NX Cam cameras are fully supported. The XD Cam EX cameras from Sony, and the Red 1 camera. So if you're working with any of these formats, you're going to want to know about the Device Explorer. The Device Explorer enables you to find the clips, pull them off your camera onto your computer and into your project in one easy step. So let's go back to the application here and take a quick look at how this works. So to open the Device Explorer, I'm just going to go to my View menu, choose Device Explorer, and then I can navigate to my devices. Now in this case, I don't actually have a device connected to my computer, but I've got disk images for a couple of devices here. I've got my XDCam EX, so let me import that, and I'll import some Red footage too. So if I had the camera or if I had a reader, I could mount those using the exact same techniques. Now the Device Explorer window gives me some nice handy thumbnails of everything that's on on that image, so I can scroll through those. I can preview them to find out if it's exactly the one I want. Once I decide it is the one I want, I can simply just add it to my project. Now when I do that, it will add it to my timeline and simultaneously import it to my computer, to my hard drive in a location that I specify. Now if I don't want to add it to my timeline immediately, I can just as easily add it to my project without putting it on my timeline. So here, let me add one of my EX clips. I select it, simply click Import, and now it's in my project media window. So one workflow could be that you go through your disk image and import them into your project media window, and then once you've got everything imported, then start adding to your timeline. Either way is a valid way to work. Okay, so that's the Device Explorer window. Very handy for using those when you're working with those file formats. And so it's one of that is the technique that you're going to want to know when you're working with AVC HD, XDCam EX, and Red 1 to get that footage onto your into your project. All right, technique number 2, using the trimmer window. Now earlier I mentioned that the traditional Vegas Pro workflow was sort of drag it from the Explorer window, drop it on the timeline, mark your in and your outs, and go to it. If you'd rather use a more traditional source window approach, that's what we use the trimmer window for. We can use it as a trimmer window to mark your in and your outs, add your audio and video streams together or separately, and then I'll talk about a couple of special techniques that are useful with the trimmer window. So let's take a look at the trimmer window right here. Now I can bring anything into the trimmer window from a number of different places, but for instance, I imported that XDCam EX file into my project media window a little earlier. Now I want to use it, so I'm going to bring that into my trimmer window. A couple of different ways I can do it. In this case, I just drag and drop it into my trimmer window. And you can see I can see the video and I can see the audio. Now I can set my in and my out points. I can click in here just to find it, or I can drag the cursor and scrub through it. Here comes the guy in the boat, so I'm just going to put my in point right there. I press I on my keyboard for in, just like you would expect, and scrub over to my out point and press O for out. And so now I've defined the in and the out points of that media, and I can add it easily to my project. So as I said, I can add both the audio and the video, or either one or both. I can simply drag it down into my timeline to add both of them. If I want to add one or the other, there are a couple of different ways I can do that, but I can right-click and drag it, and then I can choose either the audio or video or whatever. In this case, I'll just cancel it quickly. Okay, so I've added that clip to my timeline. Now, a couple of the special techniques that I wanted to talk about are real helpful in a couple of different situations. So in this situation, what I did is a kind of a traditional three-point edit where I marked my in and my out in my source window, and then I dragged it to my timeline and dropped it in to wherever I've decided to add it in my timeline. I can do a different type of three-point edit as well. And let's say that I want my in point. I know my in point, and so I've marked that in my trimmer window, but I have a space to fill here in my timeline, so I want to fill that. So I don't necessarily know what the out point of my media is going to be, but I can let Vegas figure that out for me. If I double-click to create a selection, I've now created an in and an out point in my timeline, and I've got the in point in the trimmer window, and now if I click the Add Media button, it just fills the space that I needed to fill. So that's a real handy technique when you've got a hole in your project and you need to fill it and you know what you want to start with. It doesn't necessarily matter what you need to end with, you just need to fill the hole. That's a great way to do it. Now there's another technique which we call fit to fill, which is sort of a 4-point editing model. So let's say I want to fill this space in my timeline. So I double click to create my in and my out points in the timeline, but I have a specific area in my my source window, my trimmer window, that I need to use in that space. So what I've done now is I've created 4 points, an in and out in the trimmer and an in and out in the timeline. And we've got a button called the Fit to Fill button right here. And watch what happens. When I click this, Vegas fills the hole on the timeline with whatever I chose up here. Now in this case, they didn't happen to match. In other words, I had a bigger hole than the time that I'd selected in the timeline, so Vegas has changed the playback rate of the media that it dropped in, and you can see this squiggly line which indicates that that playback rate has been changed. And we'll talk a little bit more about playback rate as another one of the techniques that we're going to talk about. But the fit to fill feature is a great one when you've got specific material that you need to put in a specific time. And so that's how that works. Okay, technique number 3, manipulating events. You saw a little bit of this already as I've been going along here with moving and trimming and so forth, but there are a couple other ones that I want to talk about here quickly. So let's go back to the interface, and I know I'm going really quickly here, but we've got to go fast to get through this. I'm going to delete this event so that I'm creating another hole in my project. And notice that the events in the timeline in this area, they have a specific relationship. They're all edited together nicely. But I've got a hole in my timeline. If I now decide that I need to close that hole and I move this first event, well, that's fine. I closed part of it, but there's still another hole, and I would need to move another one and keep filling in the hole. I would have to do that manually. Well, we've created what we call the ripple editing model to. Sorry, let me just do this. Okay. Using the ripple editing model, we can automatically close those holes. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move the first event into place. Now I've still got the hole here, but I can come up to Edit, Post-Edit Ripple, and in reality, I never really choose Edit, Post-Edit Ripple. I've just memorized these keyboard commands, F, Control plus F, Control plus Shift plus F, and I would suggest you do the same, because when you know these keyboard commands, this process is much quicker. But the idea here is that I can ripple everything that was related to that first event that I moved down so that they maintain their original relationship. So when I choose the affected tracks here, you see that everything else ripples into place. Now let me undo that, and I'll do it again. This time I'm just going to use the keyboard shortcut F, and you see how quickly you can ripple that back into place. So ripple editing is a very powerful tool, and you can do it with the keyboard shortcuts. There's also an automatic ripple mode that comes in handy in various situations. So that's a good one to learn. Okay, now also let's move this out of the way, and notice again when I move this event, I'm moving the video event, but the audio event moves with it. Remember that we group them so that you maintain sync. And the same with if I edit one, trim one, the other one trims with it. Now what if I want to edit the audio a little bit differently than the video? Well, we've got a feature called Ignore Grouping, and it's up here in the menu bar, or the button bar. So I'm going to turn Ignore Grouping on, and now I can edit my audio separately from my video. Now here's a tip. When you use Ignore Grouping, my suggestion is you leave it off until you need it, then you turn it on, make your edit, and then immediately turn it back off, because now they're grouped again, and if you move one, they'll maintain sync. So Ignore Grouping, I think you'd be surprised how often you actually use that technique. I use it all the time in my editing. All right, one more quick one that I want to show you is the ability to slip media in an event. And let me zoom in here a little bit so you can see this a little bit better on the timeline. As you saw earlier, if I click and drag this event, it moves it. But if I know that my event is in the right place, but I need to I want a different part of the media in that event, I can slip the media within the event without moving the event. So what I'm going to do is hold my Alt key Holding my Alt key, you notice that the icon, my mouse icon, has changed. So here's without and here's with the Alt key. And now when I click and drag in that, I'm dragging the media within the event, but not changing the location of the event itself. And this is another really handy tool, especially when you're trying to synchronize audio with another clip, when you're trying to synchronize things. Just the ability to go in and shift, slide it like this is really helpful. Now notice the video preview window. When I slide this, the video preview window breaks into two halves. The left half is showing me the in point, and the right half is showing my out point. So I can easily just slide in, keep my eye on that, and get the piece of media that I want. So there are some quick editing techniques for you. All right, technique number 4, automating your project. A lot of you probably already know how to use automation envelopes in your project. I want to show you a couple of techniques that you might not know. I'm going to add a quick volume envelope to this audio track. And as you might know, you can add points to this and then change the points, change the location of the point itself to change the automation of the track. But if I hold down the Shift key, watch what happens. I can now draw freehand. And this is actually, this is a really handy technique that a lot of people actually get pretty excited about when they find out that we have it, because you could come in and draw exactly the envelope that you want just by holding down the Shift key and drawing. Now, another new feature in Vegas Pro 9 is the ability to edit envelope points by time. So here I've made a time selection, and if I now move one of these points within that time selection, notice that they're all moving in relationship to the one that I'm moving. So it's a great way to quickly edit a group of points in your timeline. Another use for making a time selection in editing is that if I want to create a quick duck in this audio here, I can just create a selection and bring it down. Vegas creates the points that I need for me, and I've got my duck just like that in one step. So those two techniques, shift drag and time selection envelope point editing, are really helpful as well. Okay, number 5, slow and fast motion. We talked about slow motion earlier when we did the fit to fill edit from the trimmer window, but there are a couple of other techniques that I want to cover here. So I can create a fast motion or slow motion in any event. If I right-click this event and choose Insert Remove Envelope Velocity, I now have a velocity envelope, and I can drag it up to 300% or down to 100% in reverse. So I can reverse this clip if I want to. I can use the same shift technique that I just used and just showed you in the other techniques. But what's nice about this is that I can, if I add a point and right-click, I've got some various options here, and one of those is set to. And in the videos that I create for our training DVDs, I'm using a lot of freeze frame things, and to create a freeze frame, I just choose set to, I type in 0, enter, and now I've created a freeze frame. And if I play this, you can see that the water is no longer moving, and we've created a freeze frame. So the velocity envelopes is a very powerful tool for creating velocity changes, both speeding things up and slowing things down. Probably my favorite method for creating slow motion is to hold down the Control key as I trim the edge of an event. And when I do that, my mouse icon gets the little squiggly line under it indicating that it's going to create motion change or velocity change. And now if I drag this out, you can see there's that jagged line that we saw a little earlier indicating that there's a velocity change to this clip. And if I play through that now, you can see that I've created real quickly a slow motion. And even while it's playing, if I want to speed it up a little bit, I can just Control Shift it and drag it in and change the velocity. So those are two velocity techniques that are very helpful. Okay, technique number 6, parent-child relationships. If you want to control a group of tracks, you can do so with a parent-child relationship. So let's real quickly make this a little bit taller here, and I'm going to bring a clip down underneath. So now I've got two clips on top of each other. I'll take the velocity envelope off this first clip just to sort of clean it up a little bit. And of course you can't see the second clip, the one on the bottom, because the first one is on top of it, but I can create a track motion and create a quick picture-in-picture here. So let me just do something down sloppy here just so you can see it. And I will bring the window out so that you can see that a little bit better. Okay, so here I've created a quick picture-in-picture. Now what if I wanted to move this whole composite as a group? Well, that's where parent-child relationships come in. So I'm going to make track 3 a child of track 1. Notice that now it's bumped in a little bit. And they're now grouped, or they're now related to each other in a parent-child relationship. And that gives me what's called a parent motion button right here. When I click the parent motion button, I can now resize, move, rotate, whatever I want to do, the whole group as a group and maintain their relationship that existed between them originally. So parent-child relationships, very powerful tool. I can have multiple layers of nesting, so if I had another track down here, I could make it a child again of 1, so that 1 would have 2 children, or I can make it a child of 3, so that basically track 4 would be a grandchild of track 1. So there's a lot of flexibility in there, and it's a very powerful technique that you really should learn, and as you learn more about it, you'll find more and more uses and times when you will want to use it. Okay. Audio buses. Let's talk about audio bus track routing real quickly. Vegas Pro is extremely powerful as an audio editor as well as a video editor. And let me show you one technique that many people are not aware of and can also be a very powerful technique. Let me make my timeline a little bit bigger here. Let me hit Control-Shift-Down arrow to make the size of my tracks a little smaller so you can see all of the tracks, the audio tracks that I just added to my project. So here I've added 6 tracks to my project. And what these are, the first one, I'll solo the first one. That's a little bit of music. Second one, some guitars. Third one, more guitars. Fourth one is a little bit of crowd noise. The fourth one is crowd noise. And the fifth one is just some narration. So let's say that I have created a mix here. I've got these 6 tracks, and I've mixed them all using the tools here. I've mixed them all so that it all works just the way I want it to work. But now I decide that my music is too loud, that my 3 music tracks are too loud. Well, if I was to have to go up and individually change the volume of the 3 music tracks, I might ruin the nice mix that I have. So what I'm going to do instead is create some busing. And I'm going to give you a real corny analogy here to explain what I mean by busing. If I had a group of 50 third graders and I wanted to send them all to the museum on a field trip, if I just throw them out in the parking lot, they're just going to scatter in 50 different directions and they're not going to get to the field trip. So what do? I put them on a bus. Well, it's the same thing here. If I've got 50 tracks in my project and I want them all to go to the same place, namely your speakers, I'm going to send them to what we call the master bus. And by default, Vegas sends everything to the master bus. But let's go back to our analogy, and let's say before these 50 kids go to the museum, we want to send the boys, I don't know, get a haircut, and the girls somewhere else. And then they're going to meet, and then all go to the museum. So we're going to need separate buses to send the girls one place, the boys another place. Well, we've got the same situation here. We've got, remember, 3 tracks of audio, or 3 tracks of music that I want to send, that I want to control separately than the crowd noise and so forth. So what I want to do is I'm just going to quickly add 2 buses. I'll name the first music, and I'll name the second crowd. And now I can route these tracks using my bus routing assignment buttons to the appropriate bus. And I can do them one at a time, or I could select 2 of them and send them both to that bus. Let's send these 2 tracks to the crowd bus. And now when I play this, there's the crowd. I mute the crowd completely. I can have the music coming in and so forth. So These extra buses are then routed to the master bus, which then routes it to your speakers. So there are a lot of different uses for busing like this, maybe creating an alternative headphone mix, many different reasons you could do this. So bus routing and extra buses, really powerful feature that a lot of people overlook just because they don't really understand how to use it. So hopefully you now understand. Okay, number 8. Bus tracks for master fades. Let's say we have our video here. Remember, we have a couple of streams of video, and right now they don't fade in, they just start. Well, we could, as we did earlier, point to, let me make these tracks a little bit bigger here, Control Shift up arrow. There we go. I could add the fades like I did a little bit earlier, but I would have to do one for this event and one for this event to do the whole thing. Instead, I'm going to show my video bus tracks, and here I can put in an envelope, and I'm going to drop that envelope down to 0, make a new point, fade it up, and now I have faded in my video completely. I can do the same thing with audio. I've got audio bus tracks, so I can now control the volume of my master bus or of the 2 auxiliary buses that I added. These bus tracks are not visible by default, and so a lot of people don't know about them and don't use them. But remember, view audio bus tracks and view video bus tracks, and there I've just turned those off. Number 9, working with video effects. We could go into a lot of detail here, but a couple of things that I want to show you real quickly are how you can add the same effect to two events at the same time. So if I hold down my control key here, select one, hold my control key, select the other, I can come up to my video effects window, and let's just take this add noise and drop it to the to one of the 2 events. Let me just make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. I'll bring this out. And I've now added noise to this event and simultaneously to this event. So multi-select your events and drop a video effect on one of them to apply it to more than one of them. Now, another technique is, let's say I've got the effect that I want on this clip, but I also want it on the clip below it. I can right-click and copy that clip, and then go down to my other clip, right-click, and paste the attributes of that clip, and now I quickly have I have that same effect on both of those clips. So multi-dropping on multiple events and pasting event attributes. Okay, that brings us to number 10. I know I'm flying on this, folks, but we only have about a half hour here. And let's talk real quickly about project nesting. Project nesting in Vegas Pro means that I can take an existing project and drop it into the project that I'm working on. So let me just move some stuff out of the way here. Let's say this is my master project, and I also have a project that either I was working on separately or maybe another editor in my shop is working on, and now I want to incorporate that project into this one. So I can take in my Explorer window, just like we did with media earlier, and just drop that project into my my timeline here. And I'm going to restore this just so that we can see it a little bit better. Sorry, right here. Okay. And so now we've dropped titles into my project. Now, for those of you English majors out there that are looking closely enough, you see that I made a mistake in my title, and it says I've spelled for wrong. Well, one of the neat things about project nesting is not only can I drop this in here and then add effects to it just like it was any other piece of media or trim it up or so forth, but I can go fix mistakes real quickly. So what I'm going to do is to right-click the event that holds that veg file and choose Edit in Vegas. Watch what happens. It launches another instance of Vegas Pro. So yeah, I have 2 instances of Vegas Pro open at the same time, and it opens up that project in that new instance of Vegas Pro. I can come in now, correct my mistake, and save this project. And now watch what happens when we go back to the original project. immediately it's corrected in my new project. So I didn't have to do any rendering or anything like that. Vegas Pro just recognizes that nested project as a piece of media and allows me to update it instantaneously. Very powerful technique, very handy one to know and to use. All right, well, I can hardly feel like I've taken a breath here, but those are the 10 techniques that I want to talk about. Now, if you're looking for more training, we have the Vegas Pro-10 seminar series that you can pick up off the website. And this seminar series is produced by the same guys who create the software, so you're not going to get any closer to the source for training than this. The seminar series focuses on the new features of the application. So if you've been using Vegas Pro and you're just upgrading to Vegas Pro 9, or you're considering doing so and you want to get up and running with the new features quickly, the seminar series is the way to go on that. So, okay, that was a pretty fast tour of 10 techniques. Hopefully you saw some things that you'd never seen before. And remember, you can go back and view this again if you want to see something that I went through real quickly. So I think what we're going to do now is open this up to about 5 or 10 minutes of questions. I know we're not going to have enough time to get to all the questions. If previous webinars are any indication, we've got a ton of questions, but we'll answer a few of them now and then provide answers to the rest of them via the web page a little bit later. So, Matt, you got some questions over there?
Yeah, we sure do. First question is, will the techniques being shown today be exclusive for Vegas Pro 9, or can you use these techniques in Vegas Pro 8 or earlier versions?
Well, it's a mix of both. A couple of them that I showed, I think I pointed out that they were new to Vegas Pro 9. The Device Explorer is new to Vegas Pro 9. What was the other one? Time selection of events, of automation envelopes. That's new for Vegas Pro 9. Most of the other stuff I think I covered is available in earlier versions of the software.
Thanks, Gary. Next question is, will you discuss a bit about using the multi-cam features?
Sure. Let's go back to the computer here and get Vegas open. Multi-cam features. I'm not really set up to do that, but let me just quickly mock that up a little bit. Get rid of some of these audio tracks, just kind of clean things up here a little bit. Vegas Pro does have a very powerful multi-camera technology in it. And basically what you want to do is to bring your multiple cameras into separate tracks. So let's just kind of rearrange this and pretend that tracks 1 and track 2 are multiple camera shoot of the same video, same event that we videotaped. What we can do is to combine these tracks into, once we've synced them up, combine them into a multi-camera track. And so what I'm going to do is to select the 2 tracks and go up under Tools, Multicam, and create a multi-camera track. Okay, so once I've done that, it basically has taken the 2 tracks that I had, combined them into 1 track, and using Vegas Pro's handy takes feature, has added both of those tracks to the same event as takes. So if I right-click this and choose take, you can see that now I have 2 takes in this track, and I can switch back and forth between them. And I realized that I used a very bad example because I used the same clip for both of these. So what I'm going to do is to swap this one out and drop a different one into place, and now make those a multi-track, multi-camera track. Okay. So now that I've done that, I can switch back and forth between those takes. I can right-click and choose take and go to the other one, and you can see in the preview window that it's changing, or I can use the T key to toggle through them. But what's neat, what Vegas Pro enables me to do, and I'm just moving some of this stuff out of the way just so we can see this a little more easily, is I can break my preview window up into a multi-camera view. So I'm going to go to Tools, Multi-Camera, enable multi-camera editing, and you can now see that I have the 2 streams visible in my preview window. And when I play the project, I can click to switch back and forth between the two streams. And let me just do that a few times. Okay. When I did that, notice what happens. Remember we talked about splitting earlier, and every time I switch cameras, it split the event and changed the take. So now I've quickly created a multi-camera shoot. Let me turn off the multi-camera view here in the preview window and play through this, and there are my cuts. And of course, I can use all the other techniques, the trimming, the changing takes to fix any cut that I might not have done properly. And in this case, I'm using two streams, but Vegas Pro will support up to, Dennis, 32 cameras?
32.
32 cameras. So a lot of flexibility there for a multi-camera shoot. Okay?
Great. The next question is directed towards the panel. Question is, can you ask the engineers what the advantage of using 64-bit versus 32-bit Vegas?
The primary advantage of using the 64-bit version of Vegas on a 64-bit operating system is access to all of the memory in your computer. 32-bit applications are limited to about 2 gigabytes of memory, but the 64-bit version can access all of the memory in your computer. So if you have a probably 16 gigabyte machine, you can access all of that. The other advantage of the 64-bit build is access to larger than 4 cores for the multi-threaded render feature. So if you have an 8-way machine, you'll be able to really unlock the power of that with the 64-bit version. Most of the new machines you can buy today have a 64-bit version of the operating system installed, and both the 32-bit and the 64-bit version of Vegas will run on that machine. But to really untap the potential of the machine, you need the 64-bit version.
Awesome. Thanks, Dennis. I think we have time for one more question. The last question that we're able to get to today asks, does Vegas Pro support multiple monitors?
Yes, it does support multiple monitors. I can, actually, Dennis, I think you're better at answering this question than I can be, so go ahead.
Multiple monitors can be supported in a few different ways. One way is that the dockable windows that Gary showed you all at the top of the page there, you can actually, when you undock those and float them, you can actually add more windows into that dock panel, both with tabs and with splitters. You can then drag that whole set of windows over to another monitor. So if you have a monitor off to the side, you could put all of your tool palettes or source windows over there. Another way that Vegas supports multiple monitors is through the Windows secondary monitor external monitor driver. And in that way, you can use a second or third monitor as a full screen view of your project, so that as you play or edit, you'll be able to see that full screen on a connected monitor.
Right, so I can use the video preview on external monitor button to send the video from the preview window out to the external monitor that Dennis is talking about. I didn't quite get through everything quite as quickly as I'd hoped to, so we didn't have time for a whole lot of questions here. But hopefully I did show you some things that you might not have seen before, giving you some ideas on how you can use some different techniques in your own editing. And look for more of these webinars in the future. We enjoy doing them, and hopefully you enjoy being at them. So for everybody here at Sony Creative Software, I appreciate you being with us today. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you the next time out.